For me, art is something that changes you. Something that you look at and it changes you. Well, the first person that it changes is the creator. All art is therapy in that sense.
It's almost like a tool of consciousness to evolve. That's how you can see it. It triggers you, keeps triggering you until you evolve. My guest today, Jeffrey Perlman, is a true master of branding. He's a former global CMO of Zumba Fitness, and I'm pretty sure you heard of Zumba classes, exactly that one. And he grew that company from a small direct response company in 2006 to one of the largest fitness programs in the world in 2014. I think he's serving around 15 million weekly class participants worldwide. Currently, he is building the brand of Mindvalley, and since he joined Mindvalley, Mindvalley is literally one of the fastest personal development company or brands out there. Our conversation today is a deep dive into the world of branding, also from another angle. The more conscious and the more impact-driven sides and aspects of branding. We talk about the power of brands to change the world to the better. So enjoy this conversation with Jeffrey Perlman.
We're the only animal that can imagine something and create it, right? And the imagination is really not ours. I mean, if you talk to the majority, to any artist that has ever created a masterpiece, they always report some similar stories that they weren't there. It just came through them, not from them. They were struck by lightning. It wasn't them. So a lot of what creativity is about getting out of the way. It's about being able to be open enough to allow that to come through. Creativity, second chakra, pro-creativity and creativity. Procreation and creativity are the same energy. And you don't have anything to do with the making of a baby. I mean, I have 2 kids and all I did was not pull out, really. I didn't create a protein and squirt it out. I had nothing to do with that, right? So creativity has the same kind of quality to it and inspiration. So you're really a vessel to God. You're a vessel to what comes through. The same with creating a child or creating a masterpiece.
Got it. Yeah. What you mentioned is getting out of the way. You mean you're referring to getting the personality, the ego, getting that person out of the way, and only if you're not aware of yourself, then you can create the best things.
Yeah. Many years ago, I did a deal with Vanilla Ice for Zumba. We were basically re-recording Ice Baby, whatever, that one song that he built his entire career on. And what I think happened, and I was looking at this guy and it's what a crazy life, he just created one song and that's it. And what I think happened there is that he was relaxed enough to let the creativity come through, but then he didn't understand what happened and he thought it came from him, not through him. And so he wanted to do it again. And he thought that he was going to do it again instead of, grace coming through him. And he was never able to do it again. And this is what the one-hit wonder, this is the syndrome of the one-hit wonder is that. And so, as artists become famous, it's very hard. They have to really understand the sacred practice of getting into a state of creation. Because it's very easy to let the ego take over.
And how you do that? Are there any steps you found for yourself, or that you teach even?
Yeah. So what I do is I look for the thing to come alive. Like every great artist, whether it's a brand person or a writer or whatever, they report that the thing came alive. The writer's writing their book, and the characters come alive and tell him or her the way the story is going to go, right? And the same thing happens, with all forms of art. The musician says that the song just wrote itself. Like Stairway to Heaven took 12 minutes to write. That's the length of the song. It just kind of wrote itself, right? Or Michelangelo used to say that David, the statue of David, was in the marble. His job was not to create David. His job was to set him free. So what I do is I help creators get to the point where the thing comes alive. And when it comes alive, it's very young and vulnerable and impressionable. So it's important to maintain that safe space for it. But as it starts to become alive, it usually tells the artist to grow in the direction that they don't want to grow, in that one place that they don't want to grow. Like your kids, your art pushes your buttons. For me, art is something that changes you. Something that you look at and it changes you. Well, the first person that it changes is the creator. All art is therapy in that sense.
It's almost like a tool of consciousness to evolve. That's how you can see it. It triggers you, keeps triggering you until you evolve, if you go the direction.
And I have multiple examples of how this has happened, and how some artists have not been able to grow in that direction, And but yeah, what it's about is about letting the thing wake up, understand that it is a separate entity to you, that you can't control it, and devote yourself to following it. And that's how all great art is born.
Yes. And I get this. Is there any, you talk to many artists, of course, like working with Zumba, you talk to many artists. Is there any common denominator, even before, like let's take Vanilla Ice, when he was creating this one-hit wonder? Do you have any insights? Did you know how he got into this inspirational state to get this out? And then later on, of course, he got in the way, but how to get into this inspirational state. I think this is what would interest a lot of people, including myself. Is there any process?
So I'm writing a book about that. And the reason I want to write a book about it is to go investigate that. It usually happens, by mistake. It usually happens, somebody's there and they're struck by lightning. But the more they notice that they're being struck by lightning, it's like a muscle. The more they can recognize grace. They can recognize that, ooh, something's about to happen. Like it starts feeling like there's a lot of serendipity and there's a lot of coincidences, and it just starts to feel like magic. And if you can recognize that, you can harness it. But, like a producer like Rick Rubin can create it on the spot. That's what he's great at. He's not great at music. He's great at creating a space where he gets his artists in state. Jazzists call it being in the pocket. Psychologists call it a flow state. Athletes call it being in the zone, right? But it's that place where, God is coming through.
Yeah, where you connected. And obviously somehow you can train this to repeat this. Some people figured it out, or like the greatest, I think, figured it out, and others don't.
Yeah, I think everybody's struck with this, with inspiration, once, many times in their lives. It is those people that have the confidence to follow that inspiration, and therefore create the muscle to be able to always follow, to be able to always serve that, to be of service to that. That is life coming through.
Yeah, got it. What you said is, it takes a confidence. It takes a trust and a faith almost to go with it, and also continue going with it. If, like in the case of branding, in the case of like creating these brands, which you're teaching how to. What do you advise on? Let's say you create something out of that inspiration, and then it brings you in a direction which triggers you, which is a direction which is somehow you're not sure about it. I think I remember you mentioned once that happened to you during Zumba when you changed the slogan or something, and the gym partners were about to sign off, or there was something, and how do you never know, but how do you know?
So in marketing, the big trend has always been to go from business-centric culture to a customer-centric culture, right? The customer's always right, So I believe that the great artists of the world, the Steve Jobs, Walt Disney's, the great brand builders of the world, are not customer-centric. They are brand-centric. They listen to whatever the brand is telling them. They're not here to serve customers. They're here to create a masterpiece. Imagine if an artist, Pablo Picasso, whatever, built his art based on customer trends. What type of art was being bought, what the customer wanted. They would not have created a masterpiece. And so that having that ability to listen to your brand, to what it wants to be, and help it become that, is both the job of a great artist and a great parent. That it's also keeping with that metaphor. My job as a father is to help to understand my kid's essence and help him become himself. That's what I think great parenting is. But does that answer your question? I don't feel like I answered your question.
Yeah. So, how do you keep the confidence, or how do you know this is the right direction? Let's say you had an inspiration, this is the brand. I think for Zumba it was what is actually the main thing that people get out of it. They go into this state of just joyful, how do you call it? This energetic.
Freeing electrifying joy.
Exactly. So how did you, pardon my French, but how do you have the balls, or keep the balls to just okay, this is it. I feel this is it. Let's go for it. Even if 50% of my gym partners sign off or threaten me to sign off.
Yeah, you have to trust that if you trust that it's not yours, that it's coming through you, not from you, then you trust that it's sacred. You trust that it's what wants to be, and so when you deeply listen to your brand, not your customer, when you deeply listen to your brand, you have a certainty, you have a sense of certainty as to what has to be done. And that's what great leadership is. Like I could imagine, I never met him, but I could imagine that Steve Jobs knew exactly what to do because he had a sense of certainty. And he had that sense of certainty because he spent time listening to the brand. Not the customer. He spent time really creating a certain amount of intimacy with his masterpiece.
Yeah, he get himself then out of the way continuously or constantly. Got it.
Another way people do it is they have a very strong why, right? The mission of their brand is so strong that they're willing to go through thick and thin for it.
Mm-hmm. I would like to dive in a little bit into, if you can give some insights into a visioning process. You were talking about the why before, talking about this. Like, if someone wants to create a great brand or wants to tap into this inspiration, which we talked about, is there can they approach this somehow to create the vision better?
Yeah, of course. So the brands that I create, the way I see the world of brands is in three different stages, let's call it. The first stage is brands that are functional, right? You have a very functional relationship with them. They sell you a service like, bank, a place to put money. The problem with those brands is that they're a lot of competition. It's downwards pressure. It's, it's very saturated spaces trying to offer the same thing. So if you don't have a 0 to 1 innovation, something that is completely disruptive, those brands are very hard to kind of grow and maintain. Then there are brands that sell you a function plus an emotion, right? So I don't know, let's take a brand like Harley Davidson. There's many motorcycle brands out there, but Harley Davidson sells you a motorcycle plus the emotion of irreverence. That's what they're about. They ooze irreverence, right? And then there are brands that sell you a function, an emotion, and an identity. Harley Davidson also does that. So while Honda sells motorcycles, Harley Davidson not only sells motorcycles plus the emotion of irreverence, but they also sell an identity, which is the gangster rebel, the motorcycle rebel. And so the way I work is, or usually what happens is that brands come to me that are functional brands. They're in the first stage. And so we say, okay, what is unique about your brand? So let's think about, let's say, a camera brand, right? A camera brand goes to I didn't do this, but let's say they came to me. And so we started looking at what is unique about the experience of that camera brand, or is there something that we can make unique? So maybe one camera brand would say, hey, you know what? Our camera is very small. That's what's unique about it. And then we would say, okay, well, why is that? How does that help you get a different experience? What emotions are we talking about here? And they might say, well, if it's small, it's compact, and you can use it to like go down a mountain, with it attached to your chest and be filming everything that you're seeing because it's so compact. And then you start thinking, well, okay, so if that's the experience, what's the peak emotion of that experience? If you're skiing down a mountain with a camera attached to you, well, it could be bravery, it could be, and that's GoPro. So while other cameras in the world are selling functional benefits like megapixels and lenses and stuff like that, GoPro sells bravery. It's not just that it's compact enough that you can throw it off a cliff. It's about you jumping off a cliff with it. That's what they sell. That's the emotion that they sell. And I think their slogan is like "Be a hero" or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the second category brand. And then the third category brand creates an identity. So in the first transition, what we do is we identify what we will call your emotional filter. Another great example of this was Airbnb. Airbnb was competing, had a $3 billion market cap, very similar to VRBO and HomeAway. And they were competing on marginal benefits, more listings, cheaper prices, etc. Right? And they tapped my friend Paul Stafford to do their rebrand. And what Paul did is he started to follow the customers around in their Airbnb experiences, and he realized that there was something very unique about Airbnb. That if you're in a foreign country, and your guest family invites you to break bread, and even though, with them at the table, and even though you don't speak the language and you don't, you're not part of that family, obviously, you feel belonging. You feel a deep sense of belonging. And so they took that concept and they turned that into the emotional filter, belonging. And then they built an entire brand around that. Like if you look at their logo, it's a heart and a home together. Right? Their mission is to create a world where everybody belongs anywhere. It's all about belonging. So that first transition, what we do is we look at people buy emotions. They don't buy products. They buy products so that they can feel a certain way, whatever that is. So we look at what is the underlying emotion that is inherent here, or that can be.
That's the second category you mentioned, or that's the third category? The second.
Still in the first transition. And so from that, with Zumba, it happened the same way. We used to sell weight loss and fitness like every other fitness company, and there were fitness companies at the time selling 6-minute abs and cheaper, 24-hour fitness was super cheap, right? Competing on marginal benefits. Then we said, you know what? Let's find what's unique about Zumba. And we found that 20 minutes into the class, something happens. Like you get lost in the music. And so we said, okay, that's freeing, electrifying joy. So we don't sell fitness. From now on, we sell freeing, electrifying joy. And once you have that, a universe of possibilities opens up to you. And so it takes you in a different direction. As a company, you might end up doing very different things than you would if you were a fitness company. So from that filter, we create a universe, basically. We create a universe that has people, places, and things. The things are the products of that universe and the services. The people are the people, the users, customers, employees, and the spaces are the retail spaces or the digital spaces where the universe comes alive. But you're really guided by your filter. You're not guided by opinion, and you're not guided by the balance sheet. You're guided by this filter. In the world of video games, there's a role called world builder. And you give the world builder constraints, and then they go and they imagine a universe. And that's what these great brands do. Disney World, you step into a universe.
So basically, you're an amazing world builder for brands.
Well, they are amazing. Right? I just help them create their constraints.
Yes, but you have got it.
Yeah, and so that's the first step is to go from that kind of insight on what the experience, the emotion of the brand, the underlying emotion is, to a universe. And then the second step is to place your first archetype or your first, person in that universe. So again, Harley Davidson created the Biker Rebel. Nike created the Weekend Warrior. Apple created the creative entrepreneur. To an extent, Instagram created the influencer, right? Airbnb, to an extent, created the digital nomad, the person that feels like they can belong anywhere. So then we create this person, and this person has, first of all, a mission. They have an ideology, a fight, a missionary. They're missionaries. Secondly, they have signals and their signals are dress, their rituals, their language, and their symbols. These are the elements that create this mythical character that people aspire to be. Because that's what an aspirational brand is. Everybody talks about an aspirational brand, but nobody aspires to be logos and color palettes and fonts. They aspire to be other people. So these are brands that create identity are creating, aspiration. So yeah, to answer your question more, very succinctly, you create guiding principles that are thought principles that will guide people to create a brand that is unlike anything they've ever seen or the world has ever seen, because it's not coming from them. It's the principle is guiding them into different arenas beyond the category that they're in. Like Apple is beyond a computer company, because their guiding principle was to create delightfully simple experiences. And that could happen on a computer or in a phone or with credit cards or with any music, digital music, or anything.
Yeah, makes sense. So that's the first one is functional, to sum up. The second one is adding the emotion to it, and the third one is the personality, the person into it, the identity. Got it. So then the person. So how many brands are doing this in the market right now?
There's definitely not a lot of great brands creating identity, right? I'd that's not easy to do. And there, the people have started to understand that emotion is the most important thing that people want to consume. So there are brands that are becoming more emotional, especially in a world, where millennials and Gen Z and Gen Y, they don't really care about buying things. They live in the sharing economy. They care about experiencing things. And so instead of buying their Mercedes or whatever, they want to be able to travel the world or something like that. And so in that world, brands are starting to really understand that they sell experiences, not things.
Mm-hmm. But then they still have to add the personality or the figure into it. That's the next step, which is lacking.
That's like masterpiece level. Yeah.
Okay. And basically this is guiding all your decision making in any next step. Like Apple probably guided, like, okay, are we going into phones or something else? That image, that personality, or that personality attached with that emotion guided all their decision making up until now. And I think then there's good and bad decision making, which is closer towards that and more away from that.
Yeah, with Apple, it was an interesting case. The thing, Apple was created unconsciously. The thing is that Steve Jobs was OCD, and so he had to clean things up. He was obsessed with cleaning things up. His house was empty. There was nothing in his house, and he was more proud about the things that he took off the iPhone than the things that he included into the iPhone. So when I talk about a filter that allows you to make decisions, he had that in his, the way
by
he
his way of his wiring. Yeah.
His OCD was the thing that created Apple, right? So he was lucky in that sense. It was unconscious competence.
So do you think then after his passing, the brand moved more further away from that, or they followed through with?
No, I think, well, obviously they're not innovating as fast as they were when Steve was around, but the brand was so well established by the time they died that it was pretty obvious what belongs in Apple and what does not belong in Apple, right?
Yes. Okay. And you're also very passionate about creating brands towards enhancing humanity. Is that a next stage of the branding, or what is? How would you characterize this, or where you with this?
So I think that the problem with humanity, one of many problems that we're facing as a species, is that we don't have any good role models. Gone are the days of Gandhi and Martin Luther King and amazing role models. What we have is a bunch of crony politicians, and everybody's corrupt, and nobody trusts. Even if there's a great role model, nobody will trust that. So what great brands, the ones that create identity, can do is they can create role models that are not human beings. They're not like flesh and blood. They're mythical caricatures that people aspire to be, like Harley Davidson. People aspire to be the biker rebel, but the biker rebel is not a human that is here to steal your money or to do any corrupt. So these brands create these gods that people aspire to be. In the Hindu and Buddhist cultures, when you pray to a god, they say take refuge in a god. And what take refuge in a god means is that you want to emulate their qualities. And I think that great brands can do that. They can create these gods, these mythical characters that people want to emulate their qualities. So I think they're as strong as religion. They're as powerful as what religion used to be. And as a matter of fact, religion used to teach people if religion used to teach people who they should be, great brands can teach people who they could be.
It's amazing. Imagine a world with certain type of mythical figures as an inspiration. Like Eastern philosophy figures and stuff.
I want to tell you briefly about a brand that I'm working on right now. So just to give you context, I built Zumba, which was the largest branded fitness program in the world at the time, Mindvalley, which is the fastest growing personal development platform in the world. And now I'm building a brand that I think is very needed. It's the most needed role model in the world today. I think the root of most of the problems that we're facing in the world is basically politics, the nation state. The nation state has created war. The nation state has created the refugee crisis. The nation state has created hyperinflation. The nation state has created a ton of suffering in the world. And the nation state is not such an old concept. This is like a 500-year-old phenomenon. Before this, sovereignty was with the church and with monarchs. And there was a piece of technology that crippled the church, which was the printing press. In the printing press, the church had a monopoly on information. What they said was the truth was the truth. And they had a priests that would copy books, and they were the library and all of that. And then the printing press comes out, and then the scientific revolution takes off. And the church goes crazy. They start killing scientists and, going nuts. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Just on a different level with internet, with the distribution, democratization of knowledge, information.
Well, now it's not with information, it's with money. I think what's happening now is a piece of technology that is basically Bitcoin, because blockchain can be hijacked, but Bitcoin, they haven't been able to hijack it. And it's representing a flight of capital. And the flight of capital, that money is leaving to jurisdictions where people are treated like customers, not like cattle to be milked. And that is, there's an emergent identity there, which is the post-national human being, let's call it the sovereign individual. And so I want to build a brand. I am building a brand that creates the mythical character of the sovereign individual, so that the world can aspire to be this person. People will look up to being this person and eject a totalitarian situations.
That's genius. Loving it. Wow, that's beautiful. So it's do you want to share more about this brand you're creating, or is it still like in the hints?
The thing is that Bitcoin was created by an engineer and a faceless engineer at that, and they have there's no brand management. And even though Bitcoin has no marketing team, no marketing spend, it's almost as big as the biggest tech companies in the world. Like, let's pause on that. Like, the marketing spend of Apple and Google is massive billions, right? Bitcoin has no marketing spend, no brand management, no CEO, no anything. And look at the size of it. But Bitcoin still has a problem. They have a huge branding problem, which is that most people don't understand it for what it is. Most people understand Bitcoin as a very volatile investment. Very few people understand it as a way to separate money from state. And I want to bring a little bit of clarity to that identity problem. I want to fix that identity problem.
Okay, so you're working with that brand of, let's say, Satoshi, or you're creating a different feature?
I'm creating a different brand that says, that promotes self-sovereignty. It's the self-sovereign individual, and they, and obviously sovereignty is about much more than money. But for the money part, there's Bitcoin is the escape hatch.
Makes sense. That's really powerful, really cool. I mean, very powerful, but also it can be used to create brands or create characters which are serving, as you said, the nation state. So.
And it has. I mean, the Nazi Germany is one of the best brands I've ever seen. So there's, if you look at it from the framework of function, it had a very clear function, right? Then the emotion of Nazi Germany is very unique. It's very clear, right? And did it create a new human being, the Nazi? Yes, right. It was a really well executed brand, really well executed, one of the best I've ever seen. So yeah, this could be used. This could be used in many different ways.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a powerful technique, powerful tool. Great. And so tell us maybe a bit more in the end, as you're wrapping this up, about who you exactly who you're working with. What's the exact way you're working, and I mean, people heard that already throughout the conversation, but something you want to point out here, that would be amazing, where they can find you, and also how people should start to go about this.
Yeah, well, I work with the world's best brands, and what I mean by best is I mean the ones that have the most potential to move humanity forward. And they usually they can afford big budgets. That unfortunately is something that is needed. A lot of people have approached me, with great ideas and very humanitarian ideas. And because I wanted to I have limited hours in the day, but I wanted to help them. I agreed to create a course on Mindvalley, a quest on Mindvalley, which is launching any day now, and that walks you step by step through the whole branding process. And it's built in such a way that it can't really be used for ill gain. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah.
Amazing. So Mindvalley, and anywhere else where they can find more out about you?
No, right now, no. I have a book coming out next year. There's a book on branding, and then there's a book on creativity, on what we were talking about in the beginning of the course of the podcast, which is how do you get into streets, right? And then that's really an exploration. I don't know when that book is going to come out, because I really just want to explore the conditions in which creativity happens.
Yeah, I'm super passionate about it as well. That's beautiful. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you very much.